welcome back to the Peter H channel. My name's Peter. It turned out longer than I would have liked, so to save you actually watching what could be a 50-minute video, to cook a baked jacket potato in the folding stick stove will take between 65 and 90 minutes depending on the size of the potato and the quality of the fuel. If you've got really good quality fuel, processed, seasoned sort of DIY timber, it might take 65 minutes if it's a small potato, but if it's wet sort of green sticks and it's a big potato, it's going to take 90 minutes plus. So that's the bare bones of this video. So without further ado, I saw a couple of unboxing videos of a cheap Amazon or eBay stick stove camping stove. Actually, I bought mine from eBay and it was about £14 sterling. Oh, it's 1.1 kilos. Okay. Kilos on the right hand side, pounds on the left. So it's 1.1. That's basically 1 kilo, 100 grams, or 2 pounds and 6 ounces. So it's quite a heavy beast if you're hiking, but it's your stove, so it's going to help you cook a meal. And there's a lot of comments about the blue film that they come packaged in, and they're very solid stainless steel construction. Actually very good value for money, really. Okay, so this video is rather like a more longer term evaluation from my point of view, at least. I've been using this one for about a month and it's had about 50 fire ups for boiling, baking and frying. And so let's go and have a look at this stove. And basically this video is going to be how I cook a baked potato, which is like one aspect. You can use it for many things, but a baked potato is something that you can't really do with anything other than a campfire, and you might not always want to use a campfire because of the destruction on the ground or the potential for it spreading. So that's why you'd want to use a camping stick stove. It's a safer option. I will just add one more thing. I found that you can't just use this stove on its own. Okay, you will need gloves. Now the gloves is a very personal subject. Basically, I mean, some people like certain gloves, other people don't. I'm probably making a big deal out of this. I will show you the gloves that I use, but you might want to use other gloves. Okay, they're not fireproof. The gloves I use are not fireproof, and you could instantly hate me for using gloves that could potentially melt. But the gloves that I prefer to use have a dexterous ability that fireproof gloves will not have, and I just prefer that dexterous function of the gloves. Whilst they're not whilst they could melt if you handle something red hot for like ages, and I have burned a hole in a pair of gloves, but it was reckless use. If you're careful with these dexterous gloves, I've found them not to be a problem. You could use like welding gauntlets, but you're going to find handling cooking utensils with welding gauntlets more of a challenge. So like I say, gloves, it is a big deal, and to use this stove without gloves, I don't think it's not really feasible. So especially in the dark, especially when you're cooking, basically when you have to do things. Well, sorry about that. That's a rant there. Okay, so just as a side note, these are the gloves that I've been using. They're A350, and they're these grippy. These are the sort of things that a warehouse shelf stacker might use to avoid, paper cuts and packaging injuries. They're the sort of thing that a decent employer would provide a warehouse stacker with. They're not rigger gloves. They're a dexterous version. Let's have a look. I mean, these are available relatively inexpensively, but it does add to the cost. Yeah, they're nitrile foam, which does melt if you like grip onto something that's red hot for about 10 seconds. That'll burn through there. But for a couple of seconds, these have not let me down. So the ones I've actually been using for a month, I've been using these for other things. This is the burn hole that I achieved, but that was reckless use. You've got to be careful with these. But like I say, if you're using leather, welding style or thorn-proof gloves, you'll find handling some of the smaller utensils on this stove a little bit tricky. And if you just exercise care, and you've got to exercise care really, because you're using fire and red hot components and you could easily burn yourself. This is just for one person. This is a total single use. If you've got a family, you're going to need a barbecue. Okay, I think this is such a single person use. I mean, I just want this video to be about how I cook a baked potato with it. I mean, there's a baked potato for one. There's a potential for cooking more than one potato at once, and I've used these gloves for loads of things, and I just got them covered in paraffin, so they've gone a bit. Well, I've dried them out now, but they've gone a bit funny. But I've used them for more than just the stove. Been using them for about a month, and I find that for the dexterous option and the grippy option, they're kind of disposable gloves, really. I mean, if you were to pay more for your gloves, you'd want them to last longer, but I don't think you're going to get as good a use out of them. I will say that they are actually quite cold, and my next option will be to get some, for winter use, I'll be getting some fingerless gloves for these to go into, some sort of triple extra large fingerless gloves that I can put these inside, just so that the back is warmer. Thanks. So obviously these gloves won't last forever, and you've got to be careful with them. This happened with a hot coal on the back of that fabric. A hot coal just went straight through that, and it did manage to burn me. But you know, there you go. That's the price you pay for having. You can use a mobile phone with these, and if you're careful, if you pull them up tight, you can use a touch screen with these, which is just something I prefer that option than thorn proof. And another thing, well, I'll go straight on to what twigs are you actually going to burn in your twig stove, because twigs aren't just twigs. You know, so if you do understand a little bit about, you know, gardening, you know, shrubs like this Forsythia, which comes into flower in late February, early March, these need controlling, otherwise they just keep on growing up. And if you every so often you cut them back and let them grow for a couple of years. This is where I cut it back, probably in 2021, and this is the sort of growth you get after a couple of years, although I cut it back substantially last year at that height. And you know, occasionally you just cut it at different heights every couple of years, and it gives you loads of twigs. You know, most people chuck them in the dustbin and take them, you know, down the tip. But you know, if you need twigs, you've got to look after your twig stock, don't you? Twig stock, not wood stock. Having a rant again. Can't help ranting, you know, because I'm so here's another common garden twig which has got no thorns in it, so it's really easy to hold. This is from a piece of Kerria, and basically that grows in long straight lines like this in a garden, and it turns woody of its own accord. You don't need to. If you chop it and try and make it go woody like this, you will have no luck. And then my last tool of the free processing tools is a tool you don't see too much of, and it's a pair of secateurs. And if you've got a piece of dead wood like this, you know, a pair of secateurs is really useful, because you know, you can break this up with your hands, but after doing that 20 or 30 times, it gets rather boring. You know, the feeling of snapping twigs, the vibration of snapping twigs can actually be a bit fatiguing, especially when you're as old as I am. So this is Kerria, which I will show you in a second. Also a yellow flower, and you do find it in gardens. And if if you've got an opportunity to get a garden, stick some Forsythia and some Kerria in it, and you will soon have plenty of twigs. Alright, you can't really see it very well, but because it's time of year, this is a Kerria, and this has naturally died back. And this green stuff is your natural Kerria. This is like the new growth, and that will grow up like these pieces, which are, it dies off. So there's a green piece that's growing up. That will have the flowers on it. There's another piece growing up. And it grows from this sort of rootstock, basically. You can pick yourself loads of decent twigs. Even in the wet, this stuff is kind of hollow, natural hollow fibre. So remember, you've got to have your secateurs, haven't you? Because otherwise, you just don't get a very even. You can process your burning twigs really to the correct size for your stove just by chopping it up, but rather than snapping it, because you don't usually get a clean snap. So another alternative to fuel is a piece of sort of 4x2 or something of that sort of size, for which you'll need a small chopper. That's quite a solid bit, that. I thought it would be easier to chop than that. It's got a knot in it. You could try baton in it with a survival knife, but you're probably just better off using something like a chopper. Whoops, hit the ground there, didn't I? And obviously it's still too big, so you've got to cut it down a bit further. Whoa, damn, I'm hitting the ground too much. I have to get a chopping block. Okay, so once you get down to about that size, that's going to burn really well, even on a wet day like today. So I'll just get on with that. Okay, so now chopped up that piece of it was junk wood. It's now making quite good looking pieces, but they're too long for what I want to do. So I'm going to use another tool that you might find useful. Okay, here's a folding saw by Silverline that I bought from eBay. I don't want this video to be a review about other stuff other than, how to cook this potato, but these get a lot of hate because they're very cheap as opposed to other ones, and this one's got the lock. But you can't open, there's no point in trying to force the blade open because it's locked, and you don't need to press that down into Australia. You just need to press it a little bit, and then it opens up, and it should have locked, and obviously if you try and break it, it'll break, but I've always found that Silverline blades are pretty sharp, and this isn't for like cutting down the local forestry commission stock. It's just for cutting up little bits of wood, which is very useful for it. Obviously the blade does wobble around a little bit. There's some movement there. If you wanted to take it apart and stick some washers in there, that would like triple the price of this retail. But so you could say it comes as a kit, but I don't want to say that because it's really quite good. All you got to do is touch that lever and it will close up again, and it's all right, locked and open. I really like it. But this is not a video about the saw. Let's get on with this. So that's processed that 4x2 sort of size piece of waste wood, which you might be fortunate enough to come across in a sort of urban garden situation. That was a bit of an old pergola. Most people would chuck that in a skip, but there you go. So there's a couple of tools that might help you process something like that into these suitable style chunks for the actual cooking. So there we are, a pair of secateurs, something like Kerria, and which is naturally sort of hollow with sort of foamy, easy burn inside. That's a good thing for the twig stove. This shrub is known as a Philadelphus, which a lot of people call a mock orange. I don't know why, but it's a Philadelphus. And again, if you come down here, this is kind of like a coppice style of manufacturing lots of twigs. Although if I were to cut the whole thing down, it would probably last about 3 days, you know, if you used it every day for baking, the stove. You know, so twigs, they really do burn up. But I mean, if you chop this down, it would be green wood. It wouldn't be any use. But you know, shrubs like this need management. This one, if you cut it back, you have to wait a year. So it flowers in the second year on growth. You might cut back. If you see what I mean. So these, it used to be here like thick and overgrown. So cut it off. And then this grows up, and 2 years later you get a load of flowers on it. Okay, so, and this is a Philadelphus, which is available in North America and Europe, so it's a great thing. The one shrub that I do recommend you grow if you've got any patch at all of land. Right, what we basically have here is a Buddleia, and they look like this, and they come up with mauve, or you can get white ones, purple ones, fronds of flowers that are very attractive to bees. This is a dead flower head. Okay, they're normally purple, and all kinds of insects. They're called a butterfly bush actually, but it's known as, it is a Buddleia. Okay, and they are really interesting in that they have seriously like naturally dead kind of wood, which is you know, particularly needs managing. Like every year it will grow like several feet, a couple of meters up in the air, and every April you really need to cut it back to about here. So like that was cut last year, and all of that growth is a year. And they grow in they used to grow commonly in the Second World War bomb sites because they self-set very easily, and they grow. They're not a particularly attractive shrub, probably quite unpopular in today's tastes, but if you want a supply of sticks and twigs, these need cutting every year, and you know, that will last you a couple of weeks really, all those twigs. And let's have a look. They grow virtually anywhere. I've got one growing here in a crack in the pavement, really. And you know, most people just dig that out. Well, no, say most people. Okay, a lot of homeowners would dig that out, but I mean, you know, that's a useful bush for me, really, because it's twigs, and I had a hummingbird hawk moth here last year in December. Actually, it was feeding on some of the last Buddleia flowers. I don't know what happened to the poor bugger because it was quite cold, but that's a big hawk moth, and you know, a hummingbird hawk moth, that was a nice thing to hear and see. And it likes these Buddleias that happen to grow in the cracks in the pavement, which I leave, you know, because I have to have twigs. Okay, this is a rose bush, and with the gloves I've got, if you were to handle this it would pierce most gloves. You need thorn-proof gloves for these. They're particularly aggressive, and it's really good if you can find. This is a live one because it's got shoots growing in it, and you know, who doesn't like roses? But you know, the wood, if you can chop off a dead bit and keep it for sticks, you know, but watch out for the thorns, and you need special gloves for that. My gloves, no good. Another aggressive shrub in a lot of gardens is a pyrocanthus, which have orange berries and leaves that look like this, that are evergreen, and these have got particularly nasty thorns, and when they're dead, the thorns are brittle and they can break off and stick in your fingers, so you want to be really wary of a plant like that. Don't want to handle that without special gloves either. Thorn-proof gloves, you know, leather gauntlets. The ones that I use are totally useless for something like that, and if you pick that up in the dark, you seriously know about it. Oops. Another bush you might come across is a blackthorn, which this is not a blackthorn, but it does look a little bit like this. The bark is really quite similar. But if you get pierced with a blackthorn, that will swell up purple, and you could be in pain for a few days, maybe even weeks. It has white blossoms that come out in the first blossoms to come out before the leaves, like plums. They're related to plums actually, blackthorn. Nasty stuff. You don't want to handle that even with thorn-proof gloves. Let's finally get on and cook this flipping potato. So the first thing you're actually going to want is some kitchen foil for baking a potato in the stick stove. And what I've got here is a strong, it's not particularly strong, it doesn't have the actual thickness, you know, it's just tin foil. If you're going to use thin tin foil, you'll wrap it up more, if that makes sense. I've got a selection of potatoes here from the local supermarket, and we're just going to choose one today for baking, and I'll probably choose this one, you know. So this is straight from the supermarket. So the first thing I would do is to basically give your potato a quick wipe with a piece of kitchen towel. It would just cold water. You know, they actually come out of the supermarket jet washed, I think, but you never know what's been on it. Nothing in this case, or I wouldn't have expected anything. And just dry that off. So that's another thing on your list, a little bit of water and some kitchen towel. So now another tool will be a knife for pricking the potato. You should want to prick it thoroughly, because when it's wrapped up in the foil, you needn't stab it completely, just prick the skin. But when it's wrapped in the foil, if it's not pricked, it could explode, and that will put hot coals all over the place. So you probably want to just make sure it's not going to do that. Whoops, I nearly cut myself. Alright, that'll do. You don't need much of that. Could have done it with a penknife really. So next step, I've got some vegetable oil, and I'm going to cover the potato in vegetable oil. That'll be fun. Try and do from a height. Don't want to use too much vegetable oil. You can also use that for diesel, but that's a different video, and I haven't made that video, and I don't even own a diesel, so that would be useless. Okay, so what I've done is covered it in vegetable oil, and you'll need to wipe your hands off after this. Okay, next step in preparing this potato for baking will be just to cover it. I've got some table salt here, and just cover it in a bit of salt. All over really. Nice lot of salt. Strangely, it disappears in the cooking process. So now I'm back to the tin foil, and I've got about a 30cm square of tin foil, and I'm putting this probably right in the middle. Is not the right place, but it's going in the middle today. And then basically we're going to fold it evenly. So as you can see, I folded it in the middle. Now I've only got one layer there. Got two layers at the back, but only still one layer there. So just bring it up and have it sort of evenly covered really. 2 or 3 layers. And then, you know, so basically just making the potato in a ball. It doesn't have to be, it wants to be quite tight. It doesn't really matter. It doesn't have to be a complete image of the potato surrounded by foil. It can be quite loose. Okay. Well, there's more this side than that side. And that's just the way it is, isn't it? You might think that makes a difference, but it doesn't. It cooks all the way through. We're going to turn this over during the cooking process, and you know, it still works. So I'm like ready to set up this folding camping stove now, or stick stove, or twig stove. So let's have a look at how I'm setting it up actually. So I'm putting it on a old wooden base on a stand. It's just about 20 centimeters off the ground, 8 inches off the ground or so. That's how I like to have it. You could have it on the ground. You don't have to have it like that. That's just the way. It's a convenient height for me. So right, well, let's open this and I'll try and put it together, you know, without setting up another camera. Might be better setting up another camera. Let's do that. Okay, so I'm still unsure about the SD card on my other cameras, so I'm going to set it up as well on this one. Where to start? Well, let's start with, so where to start? This tray, which some people think is an ashtray, and it is used as an ashtray as well, but I'm going to use it as a baking tray today. So that slides in the bottom there. Now there are 1, 2, 3 holes, and for baking I'm going to use the middle holes. I found if you wanted to boil up some water, you could just use the bottom holes and you get a bigger fire. Whoops. Okay, and I'm going to put the fire base on there. Okay, so this is like a cooker door for me now. And we've got to put the potato in there. Okay, so when the fire's all going and it's all red hot, I'm going to lift that up with a stick. Okay, and then I'll be removing this, which will probably be red hot, and with these gloves it is okay to do that. So you'll want to remove this and lift this, and that's how we'll basically remove the potato from the oven. And that is one of the limiting factors of the size of potato you can actually use. If it won't go in that aperture, your potato's too big. Okay, and there's no fixed time for this, because a big potato takes longer than a smaller potato, and you know, you can get smaller potatoes than the one I've used. Okay, so that's basically the first test. You have to do that test, because if it won't go in, you won't be able to cook it. Okay, well, we're going to cook it with the door shut. Okay, a lot of users, they'll feed the stove like this, okay, with the sticks going in there, but I don't do that. I want this closed to get an even heating. So we're going to have the fire on top, the red hot coals are going to drop through here, and you'll see how it goes as it goes. Okay, so basically I just rip up a newspaper and stick some twigs on top, really. Now these are all wet today, and what I'm using here is Forsythia. The thin ones are really Forsythia, and the slightly thicker ones are that is a euphorbia, which I didn't mention, but it's rare to get euphorbia in a woody condition. It's a bit like bamboo. Okay, so what I've got here is some sticks from the Forsythia. Okay, well, the thing about using newspaper is that it doesn't burn thoroughly. We will have to blow this. To make the newspaper burn thoroughly, we'll have to use bellows or blow it. Okay, that's for a different cooking technique. Alright, I don't want to waste any camera time, so... Alright, I was getting cocky there. So I put in some more newspaper, and this time I've used some cardboard in there as well. It's 3 matches, 3 strikes and you're out, okay? Whoops, sorry about that. Right, we will have to blow it because newspaper is a bit like that. Okay, using a bit of cardboard this time, and that might do the trick. Well, it will do. The wood was a bit damp. There you go. Oh. Okay, so you'll notice that one of the first things I'm doing is that top loading. Okay, and as soon as we can, well, as soon as we've lit it, basically, we can get this thing shut. The earlier the better, really. Now it's a 2-hand job, really. Okay, that's good. Okay, let's get this thing together. Oops. Right, one last thing before I don't want to waste any more of this time. We've got to make a note. So I've got 1600 hours at the moment, which is 4 o'clock. So this should be ready at 5:30, and I'll give you some updates as it goes on. Okay, just a quick update in case the other camera isn't working. It's starting to develop a nice sort of heart to the fire, and coals have started dropping through onto the potato. Take about 90 minutes, and we'll have to turn it over about 45 minutes of the way through. So I'll be turning it off at 4:45, which I think is like 16:45 GMT today. Decided to open the door and have a look in there. There's still a long way to go on this. It's been in there 15 minutes, and you know, it's hardly anything dropping down in there really. Just a little bit of ash and the occasional hot coal. There we go. Let some more drop in there, and we'll close that up now, which I'll be doing in a moment. Otherwise I'll never get it closed again. So the potato's been cooking for 30 minutes now. Let's just see if we can open it up and have a look. It does actually seem like a waste to waste this area of the fire, and would normally stand a metal cup across these 2 edges, or maybe over this side at the moment, and that would heat up some water. The other method for cooking that I like is frying, and this is quite a good frying fire. But if you were to put a frying pan over this, and you would just get a load of smoke, you'd extinguish the flame. So you have to actually have some pieces, little logs, sort of 5cm logs, to lift the frying pan over the flame and have the air current going in, because the side vents aren't enough. If you put a frying pan on top of that, or a saucepan, it would just instantly turn to smoke, which we don't want. You could sit here and hold the frying pan above it, which is alright to do in nice weather, but you know, when it's raining you don't want to be doing that, so you have to get little logs and putting them across there, sort of Boy Scout style. Yeah, don't want to obviously get too close. That's getting nice and hot in there. Plenty of coals, pieces of burnt wood trying to drop through onto our potato, or the potato should I say, really. If you find yourself frying something and you need something to turn over, this is an old wallpaper scraper, you know, and it does really well to turn your sausages over. It's quite lightweight, and if they get stuck, you can scrape them off. And it does really well to turn your sausages over. if they get stuck, you can scrape them off. Nearly had an accident there, didn't I? I don't know if that'll teach me to be complacent. Staying still rubbish. Burning up the camera. Wouldn't normally do this, but I am starving today. Storage space there, so I've been going for about 32 minutes now, and if I zoom in inside there, it's starting to be more like an oven, and that's what we want. So I'm going to turn that potato over in about a quarter of an hour. I'll just close this back up. Cooks better with the door closed. Right, running out of that processed wood now, so I'm going on to some more bits of junk. This is a bit of wisteria. That's a bit of an oak barrel planter, which I've rotted out. And that's a bit of an old garden seat, which I've started to cut up. Because it's about time to turn our potato. Okay, so I've turned the potato over after 45 minutes, and that's the sort of generic length of time for halfway cooking a potato like this. Actually, it's cooking really well, so it might actually be ready in 25 minutes now. So I've got to shut this door up. So things like, you know, moving the ashtray and undoing the thing, maybe occasionally touching the side, is the sort of thing that your gloves have to deal with, but it shouldn't be more than that. Or maybe, you know, just adjusting a bit of wood like that. So the potato's been on now for 75 minutes, and I'm going to do the prod test, which is a relatively sophisticated test. Where we prod it with a stick. And if you estimate that a knife would go through it, you know, I don't think it's quite done. What a bugger. I'm going to have to wait another quarter of an hour. About 5 minutes. I'll undo that and get it out. 5 minutes. Okay, the potato's been in there for about 90 minutes now, and it's just looking nice, that fire, but it's time to do the prod test. I'll watch it here. Okay. So that's like, well, I still think it's a bit hard, but I'm going to take it out anyway because 90 minutes is long enough. So this is where I'm going to switch to the other camera, just in case it doesn't work. What I'm going to do is lift this with a stick and remove this, and I'm quickly going to basically get it out. It's fun to watch, isn't it? So there it is. Oh yeah, it feels soft to the hand now. Okay, what I'm going to do is go and get a plate and we'll open that up. I've got myself a plate and a knife. Incidentally, I want to have a coffee, so I want to keep this. I'm going to cook up a coffee later, but that'll be a different video. But for now, I just want to put some sticks on there. So that's right. Let's have a look at this potato. Now, normally I wouldn't use a plate. I'd just eat it in the foil. I hope it's ready. I said it felt soft, but it might have just been feeling extra foil. Right, this is the moment of truth. Oh yeah. Okay. Smells done as well. So there's some of the salt and all the oil has disappeared. Hard skin, soft inside. That's how I expected. Oh yeah, bonfire night special. Okay. Well, I'm just gonna do the buttermelt in there. If butter melts in there, then you know it's nice and done. Although I know it's done because it's soft and fluffy. Oh. Right, well I'm going to go away and enjoy that. Phone's just packed up. Alright, well thank you for watching this far. If you've watched this far, thank you very much. And it was a longer video than I thought it would be. So let's see, for my opinion, using those fold up stainless steel camping stoves is definitely an option if you want to bake one single potato. Maybe two small ones. That is room for you to experiment with, but I think they're just an individual stove. And the fuel to use is kind of like DIY builder's timber, you know, well seasoned, the sort of offcuts. If you can find offcuts, they chop up well, you can get consistent results. You know, failing that, dead twigs, if if as long as they haven't got thorns in, you'll be all right collecting those in the dark. You know, and you know, it doesn't like green wood. Nobody does though, do they? Well, I would just like to add regarding the gloves that I wore, if they get wet and it's cold, they are really rubbish. You know, your fingers get really cold when the gloves are wet. They seem to retain moisture. You know, when they're dry, they really function quite well. Also, when I'm opening and closing, you can just hold a piece of rag in front with those gloves as well. You know, you could use a sort of a cloth, which I didn't demonstrate in this video, but it only occurred to me later that you can just use a rag. A screwed up rag gives you more distance between the hot item and your fingers and your gloves. Yeah, so feel free to comment about, like, how do you like your potato? Boiled, chipped, baked in its jacket, or some other way, fried, you know, whatever. be interesting to read a couple of comments, you know, and what are your experiences with those fold up camping stoves? Well, thanks again for watching.